Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. Our topic for this presentation is embracing cloud innovation. This is Michael Corbin. I'm with INNOVA Consulting Group, and I'm with Bruce.
Hello, Bruce Scott with INNOVA Consulting Group as well, and I'm Vice President for the group. And looking forward to our seminar today, our webinar.
Yeah. I'm going to move forward. We will have, first of all, this is being recorded and we'll share that with all the attendees and others that couldn't make it. We'll also have the deck available for everyone when we're finished. And also at the end, we're going to be giving away a $250 gift card to one of the participants. So stay tuned and hopefully when we get to the Q&A portion, we'll get some good questions and give out that gift card at that time. All right, I'm going to start the presentation just with a quick overview of INNOVA Consulting. We are a Microsoft Gold partner. We help our clients with business applications such as ERP and CR implementations, and then certainly all things Microsoft in the cloud and Azure. We do usage and adoption around Office 365, and we also do mobile application development. And surrounded by all of that is data management, security, and the cloud. So today's presentation is about embracing cloud innovation, and everything we're going to share with you applies to all clouds, but in particular our expertise is on Azure, and so you'll note that we focus on that.
Well, Michael, in today's world, there's a lot of technology-driven disruption that's happening for our clients and in the marketplace. And either you be the disrupted company or you're the disruptor, and that's where you can see exponential growth opportunities. So really, technology is a big driver to that disruption. And if you go to the next slide there, the pressure is mounting for organizations to really stay relevant and get ahead. So standing still and staying where you're at is not going to get you where you need to be in the future. There's a lot of competition for your customers and maintaining your customers. There's a challenge for operations to be more efficient and productive, and it's an ever-increasing environment of driving value for customers and stakeholders. Standing still is no longer an option. So the big challenge is change is difficult. We understand that it impacts people, process, culture. All these things can feel very risky. However, it requires new disruptive thinking, because if you don't address it, then you're going to get left behind and you potentially become irrelevant, like we've seen some major companies like Kodak and others that have happened in the not too distant past. So it requires leaders to really adapt, take risk, and learn quickly and drive that culture shift from within the organization.
Yeah, there are certainly some other risks by not moving to the cloud and fixing your technology or updating your technology. Aging technology is becoming more risky than ever before. The security threats out there that we're all aware of, quite often are happening with on-premise servers and companies that have not moved to the cloud. The legacy technology, if you think just 10 years ago, if you have technology 10 years old, how much has happened since then, and the threats and the opportunities to be more connected and integrated with your business. So legacy tech and all that cost to keep that current, maintenance impedes innovation, meaning your IT department is spending all of their time updating, fixing patches, and trying to keep you current or secure where they could be creating innovation. So the data breaches are everywhere. We see them. It's emails and passport numbers are getting stolen left and right. So the liability for these companies, and we'll talk further about this, of not being secure and backed up is tremendous.
Indeed. Actually, when you look at the challenge of security and how quick does it happen, often people think, well, I'll have some heads up that I've got an issue coming. but the data that we have says that 87% of compromises to security happen within minutes. So there's not a lot of time to react or respond or stop these threats. Either your systems are developed and designed secure up front, or they're at risk of being hacked within minutes. And then the challenge to that is once there is a hack or a security breach, it often takes months to address those and recover from those security breaches, but also it takes months or more to even uncover them and discover that they're there.
Unknown participant is now joining.
So
Okay.
anyway, these are all major issues, and again, one more click there, Michael.
Yep.
You know, that's really driving the challenge for corporations today.
Yeah, take a look. I mean, the amount of records that have been stolen by hackers, the 20% of those organizations that have been hacked or lose those customers during the, from an attack, and you lose the trust of your customers. 30% of the organizations are losing revenue because of those attacks, and 28% of them are coming from the inside of the company. And so that's where you may not even know that you have an issue on your network or some sort of virus, and they'll come back to bite you at a later date, and the significant impacts that can really harm the business. Beyond security and protecting data, there are now things like GDPR that is in Europe. It's coming to the United States. California has a bill out there that's probably going to pass, and we'll probably see this throughout the country. In that ensuring privacy rights, the protecting of data, the reporting of any breach, and the significant penalties that are going to hit these companies that are not compliant. So, moving to the cloud for efficiency is absolutely positive. Moving to the cloud to protect your business and your customers and their privacy is essential today.
Yeah, and an interesting fact here, Michael, is that when you're looking at cloud providers and you're looking at making that transition to the cloud, you need to look at your providers' policies and position with regard to trust, transparency, and security. And we work with Microsoft. They actually have all of their policies set up with GDPR first. So regardless of whether you're in Germany or you're anywhere in the world, you have the ability to have full GDPR permissions granting capability for your personal information.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's built into the Azure cloud.
Yep, and that's something you need to look for whenever you look at a cloud provider partner.
Yeah. So, real quick, some of these penalties are so significant, they have to get your attention. So GDPR requires they'll fine you up to 20 million euros or 4% of your global annual revenue or turnover. So that is a huge chunk of money, and PCI is the same, SOX. They very much are serious about this, and it's not worth the risk of not complying.
Exactly. So maintaining aging technology also creates barriers for a business in terms of helping to drive innovation. You have application silos that are built for older technologies, such as the web, and not necessarily designed mobile first. You've got static apps that serve up and store data as opposed to being dynamic and real-time information driven by AI. You've got older servers and infrastructure that you have to manage that have built-in hardware, software refresh cycles. So there's a whole capital expense cycle that you've got to look at every few years. Plus, you've got some of the challenges of managing the scale and capacity of your infrastructure for your business. So when you're working with on-premises infrastructure, you really have to plan for your growth for the next year. So if you plan for 30% growth in 2020, you invest in your IT infrastructure for that 20% growth. Well, what happens if you hit 50% growth? Now you're behind the curve and you don't have the capacity you need. Contrarily, what happens if you get 10% growth? Now you've overinvested and you've consumed capital that otherwise could have been put to better use. So these are all challenges with when we look at the infrastructure of yesterday, and often what people are on today is the challenges of not having that responsive environment.
Yeah, let's look at today and the future, and let's embrace cloud innovation. Today there's multi-channel applications, websites, mobile, agents, and Internet of Things. All of these things that are surrounding us in our lives today are all connected through the cloud. Data-driven apps that are instantly personalizing the experience for you requires a cloud. By moving to the cloud, you can remove the maintenance efforts and again redirect that towards new innovation for your organization. The scalability of the cloud is unlimited. So as Bruce mentioned, you can scale up, scale down depending upon your needs and your business. Then the security and the intelligent protection that's detecting the threats before you're even aware of them. As you're part of a cloud network, everyone is learning from each other and sharing that information to hopefully provide a better experience for everyone. And then just the whole seamlessness of technology, being able to connect all your devices and applications and processes requires that connectivity of the cloud. So let's embrace it. And let's talk about, ROI and why make that move. There's many reasons, but certainly if you don't move to the cloud, you maintain those expenses within your IT department or your IT expenses. $360 billion has been identified that went towards incidents, just helping out employees at various companies, and all that time that could have been spent somewhere else, and money. The cost of it is 80% of IT are spent patching and network setup and firewall configuration. All of that goes away with the cloud, and you get that set up once and you're done. And then just the processes, this is more of a workflow. 1.1 billion manual processes that are being done that could be automated if the company was in the right cloud environment.
That's amazing. 1.1 billion hours that could be saved. That's huge productivity opportunity.
Not just productivity, but also elimination of errors and manual errors. So it is definitely worth doing.
Yeah, so the modernization strategy is what's going to enable you to drive your innovation and growth. Again, reducing 80% of your IT capacities focused just on patching and network setup and firewall configuration. What can you do with that 80% of your resources towards innovation and growth? Same with websites. Things need to be very responsive. I've had clients say, well, yeah, it takes me 3 weeks, 6 weeks to get a new server online. So how can you be responsive in an environment where it takes that long to get the infrastructure to support what the market is demanding of you? And then you top that off with the ability to access the data analysis capabilities, having all your data in a cloud environment, so you're in a uniform platform that has tools that enable that deep data analysis and machine learning and advanced innovation. AI,
yeah,
come on.
That's right.
Help me out here,
that.
Michael.
I love that quote. Make personal connections that stand out in a sea of information. And we all hear about AI and machine learning. That all requires, access to the data and from multiple sources. And that's what the leaders are doing today. They're harnessing all of that intelligence that's been collected through various means, and really creating those personal experiences and connections with their customers. So organizations that harness data, the cloud, and AI are outperforming their peers 2-to-1 in operating margin and additional $100 million in additional operating income. So the impact is significant for those that are embracing it. So why now? Why the cloud? Let's take a look. This is a great little chart of migration and modernization triggers. What is triggering a company to make the move? And maybe you've done a partial move, not your whole company, and there are various reasons for that. And so we start with your contract at your data center is about to expire. So that's a good time to say, okay, what are we doing here and paying, and what's our cost, total cost of ownership in that data center versus moving to the cloud, and what are the other benefits? performance. Quickly integrate acquisitions. This is an interesting one where if you buy a company that has on-premise software, you're in the cloud, it's going to be a longer process to integrate. If they're in the cloud, you're in the cloud, it can be done really quickly. So that's an opportunity, and that's why you would want as a company to be in the cloud and be in a position for growth, partnerships, acquisitions, et cetera. The urgent capacity needs, we've talked about that. You can scale up or scale down depending upon cycles of your business at any time. And also the software and hardware refresh. So if you're due to go buy more on-premise software, and you might want to take a look at the cloud. The costs are coming down in the cloud. And we'll talk about that. If you haven't looked at Azure pricing in the last couple of years, they've really brought things down, and it's and added services and capabilities to it. So
yeah,
these
Michael,
are some good reasons. Go. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's kind of like if you priced a 4K TV 3 years ago, it was 10 grand. Well, today you can get it for under 1,000. So looking at what your cloud costs are, hey, they're migrating as fast as technology is in other areas. So some of the other triggers for migration modernization are around security threats. The opportunity of embracing a cloud platform allows you to leverage the whole security platform that the cloud provider has. Microsoft sees over 4 trillion incidents a day. And so they've got a team and a system and a software and all the automation set up to handle that. Plus, you've got your compliance challenges. As we mentioned earlier, GDPR, PHI data, personal health information, PII data. All of these are areas where having internal infrastructure leaves you potentially vulnerable versus using the cloud where it's designed to handle all of these requirements out of the box. And then application innovation is another area of opportunity, because when you're in the cloud, you're able to move as quickly as those applications are evolving in the cloud. When you look at what's happening with Office 365, with Dynamics, with Salesforce, with many of these applications that are built in the cloud, it allows that agile, rapid evolution of the application. Well, if you're in the cloud, you can adopt that quickly. If you're not in the cloud, you're on premises, you have a whole management and rollout of those updates that are coming out that creates more overhead. And then the last area that's of interest, and we can talk a little bit more on the next slide, is when you see software going end of support. And with regard to that, if you want to click on through there, Michael, we've got the end of support software happening for Windows Server 2008 R2, that comes up end of support in January 14th, 2020. And then SQL Server 2008 R2 is already end of support. And so the question is, how do you handle those security updates? They're not happening anymore as part of the software. What about the additional cost for supporting and patching that? You've got compliance and regulatory concerns. You've got missed innovation opportunities. How do you handle that? Well, one of the opportunities here is within the Azure solution for hosting your Windows Server 2008 or SQL Server 2008. We can actually save money over what it might cost to host on other cloud platforms, because Microsoft has brought in the cost of SQL and Windows Server as part of their Azure pricing. And so you see up to a 5x reduction in cost compared to an AWS solution for hosting those workloads. They'll give you 3 years of security updates after support ends, plus your licensing costs are reduced 75% versus buying it standalone. And you can really use those existing licenses with the Azure Microsoft Azure hybrid benefit. Sorry, Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think the point here is that there are options as you migrate to the cloud, and it doesn't have to be all at once, or if you're, really invested heavily into an older application, there might be options to use that in the cloud. And in this case, see significant savings and still maintain that security and that ongoing support from Microsoft. In this case. So again, the advantage for if you are on a Microsoft application is that Microsoft doesn't, you don't have to double pay those licensing fees, where if you put it onto AWS or Google, you would have to pay that fee. So big savings there. So here's 3 more reasons to migrate or modernize a 2008 server application to Azure. We've talked about the modernization and support. You're going to pay less and have free extended security updates. And the cost is incredible. You can save up to $750,000 for moving 3 into support servers over the next 3 years versus on-prem. So it is really big savings, plus all the other benefits and the security and the compliance. Anything else you want to add there, Bruce?
No, just a small note. It's 100 servers. You save
what did I say?
3.
Oh, God. Oh,
yep.
Sorry.
That might be a little different.
Bigger.
Anyway,
yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. All right, take us on the journey.
Sure. So the transformation journey, there's 2 different work stream options that we consider here that we want to talk through. One is operational efficiency focus, where you've made a determination that you want to be off your on-premises infrastructure into the cloud by a certain date. Maybe it's 12/31/2019, maybe it's 12/31/2020, whatever that date is. So that work stream is kind of the first column there, where you've got the infrastructure-oriented migration, and that's going to be driven by your timeline, and that's what we call a rehost or a lift and shift. And so this takes your basic infrastructure that you have on premises and replicates that in your cloud environment, in the VMs and in the systems that are in the cloud. So that's a fairly straightforward one, considered as you look across the top, the different types of modernization and migration efforts, consider the rehosting or the lift and shift. The second one is where you have application innovation and operational efficiency focus. And this one is where you want to drive a more modernized application for your clients and for your business. And so that would involve a full update, refactoring of your application, re-architecting, potentially rebuilding, and then deploying that into the cloud. And the great part about working with INNOVA Consulting Group is, yes, we can help you with the cloud, but we can also help you with that refactoring, re-architecting, and rebuilding those applications.
Exactly. All right, let's look at the cloud. I don't know if you think Azure only hosts Microsoft applications, and that's just not the case. With any of the workloads like computing power, networking power, certainly storage, are all available on demand through the cloud. It can be purpose built for specific applications in SAP, NetApp, Cray, VMware. All of these can be accessed through the cloud. And interestingly, Linux, open source, Red Hat, 40% of Azure VMs are running on Linux, open source. So they're seeing tremendous growth there, and that co-located support with Red Hat is all built into the cloud. And then there are some best workloads from Microsoft, the unique hybrid experience, a server plus Azure cloud, Azure making that migration, the consistency between Azure SQL and the database management, and then the deep trust. And that's something that Microsoft prides itself on, is that security and trust and reliability.
Yeah, and that's an amazing fun fact that over 40% of the Azure workload are VMs running Linux. So our open source is our biggest workload. So when people think about Microsoft, they may not necessarily think open source. Well, we're here to tell you it's different.
Yeah, welcome to the future. All right, well, we're going to dive into a little bit of the migration journey and some of the tools that we use that are available out there, and really the process that we go through when we help a company migrate. And there are many of them out there, so we're going to share what we're using.
Yep, we have a unified, extensible cloud migration experience. And again, these tools are really focused in a broad level. Any migration process for a cloud journey would involve these steps. And we do highlight some of the tools that are available through Microsoft, since that's the platform that we work most closely with. So your first goal is, let's assess what the environment is, what your current infrastructure is, and put together a plan on what you want to do in terms of migration to the cloud, whether that's an all-in complete lift and shift of your whole data center, or whether it's a hybrid approach where you leave some on-premises workloads as well as having your cloud workloads in a hybrid environment. Then you go through your migrate phase, on into the optimize, and then the secure and manage. We've got a variety of tools to help with that, Michael, right?
We do indeed. So let me advance a slide here. Well, there's still some more. Let's talk about governance real quick, Bruce, and just how,
Sure.
all of the factors before you make that move to the cloud that need to be considered, defining your management group and your organization, the hierarchy within your organization, so that you will have a good handle on permissions and how, you want to set up your network, what policies need to be put in place, compliance policies, access, assessment, remediation, all the processes and policies within your organization. Then we develop a blueprint that is going to align with that management structure and policies, and gives us a repeatable manner using composable artifacts. Resource graph, so all of the resources that are going to be available, and then cost management, so monitoring your cloud spend and optimizing your resources. And we'll get into that a little bit later here as well, because the consumption, there's opportunities to save money and only pay for what you need.
Yeah, exactly. And as you're looking to embrace cloud innovation, whether you look at Azure specifically or any other cloud, these are important steps along the way. So one of the key things you want to do is to continually optimize your resources during and after the migration. Number one, as you're moving, you want to right size those resources in the cloud based on your assessments, and you want to make sure that you're leveraging any benefits with regard to a hybrid infrastructure that might be available. And I know certainly within Microsoft and the Azure environment, there's ways to save money with reserved instances, ways to save money with licensing with a hybrid environment and hybrid benefit. So there's a lot of areas that we can help to minimize that cost. And then after the move, you want that unified experience to optimize the cloud bandwidth. And Azure provides tools for cost management, as well as a built-in Azure advisor that gives you best practice recommendations. So it's all designed to enhance and give you the cloud experience and help you manage and minimize the cost. I know there's horror stories out there, Michael, about people in the past where they go to the cloud and all of a sudden they get a $200,000 bill and they're like, holy cow, where'd that come from? Well, we have tools now to help them manage that and make sure there's no surprises.
Absolutely. So keep migrated workloads secure and managed, and it's built-in intelligent services for Azure and on-premise workloads. This is where once you're getting to the cloud, you've got that proactive governance that's taking place. Your security with advanced threat protection, it's built into the cloud experience. The resilience, just the reliability and protection for the VMs and apps and data and your users as well. The tools to really monitor properly, deep organizational insights and that intelligence, just to keep an eye on your network and make sure it's continually optimized and secure. And then automating all of these tasks of maintenance and creating powerful scripts and being able to update everything on demand. So turn on security, backup, and monitoring for every migrated resource. Now,
Absolutely.
Bruce, where do we start?
With cloud migration, where do we start? Let's talk about that. Within the INNOVA Solutions platform is Movare, which, by the way, happens now be owned by Microsoft as of last week. So Movare is a tool that provides the ability to install bots on your systems and evaluate and provide a complete in-depth analysis of your system, all of the workloads, all the servers, actually gives you a cloud readiness report, and then a licensing, it'll show you how you're doing on your licensing. We actually had one instance where it identified about $400,000 in licensing savings because a client had their all these licenses deployed, but they weren't being used. So this tool provides that ability to evaluate your licensing and then gives a roadmap for the optimization and transformation of that environment, your on-premises environment, either to an all-cloud environment or to a hybrid environment. At the same time, giving you those cyber optics to give you a view of what's going on from a cybersecurity and overall infrastructure perspective. So following this, we're going to have a few slides that just show you high level some of the reports that come out of this assessment. And by the way, often we can get this assessment done for free for our clients with Microsoft funding if you qualify. So that's something we always pursue right up front, is seeing if we can get some of that Microsoft supported funding to help your journey to the cloud. With this executive summary, it's showing you how many servers you have, the type of servers, the type of operating systems you're working on. And so this is just a high-level summary of what's going on in your network. And then the next slide shows you the next level of detail around
yeah, I just wanted to note, Bruce, that Movair's agentless bots can scan 1,000 servers per hour to capture everything within your environment. And we typically want them to run, 5 to 7 days, so they really are able to capture the data on the server loads and peaks and valleys of your business, so that you have a real accurate report of what's going to be required as you migrate to the cloud.
Good point, Michael. Thanks for catching that. Another one it shows, another report it provides is your overall network map and where your communications are happening from the front end to all the different endpoints. So it gives you a complete picture of your different devices, how it's traveling, and where it's going. And then the next slide gives us a little bit of an overview of your licensing, how many CALs you have, what their active number of users are. So maybe you've licensed 100 Exchange standard licenses, but you're only using 53. Well, you're paying for 47 you don't need. So these are areas where this type of analysis can help you with understanding your overall licensing platform and perspective.
All right. Well, great. Let's talk about some key resources and investments that can be made as you migrate. And the key elements to a successful migration. It's the the approach you take and how you plan for it, and all the work that's done up front. The different tools that are available to help you make that plan. As Bruce mentioned, the offers, Microsoft has funds available to help companies, first assess their environment, and then also to offset the cost of actually doing the migration. So please reach out with those, any questions there, and we'll see if you're eligible. Having a good partner that's experienced is important as well. You don't want to mess this up, and then ongoing training and support, and make sure that you're continuing to optimize your cloud environment.
Absolutely. So from a best practices standpoint, when you look at your migration, you want to be looking at people, process and planning, and technology. This way, you're focused on looking at processes, your people, how they're interacting with the data, and you want to make sure that you set up that center of excellence focused around executing that migration and ensure that all the stakeholders are engaged. This is a complex situation. You want to make sure you've set up the proper organizational change management for learning and certification of your personnel that are going to be involved. And then you want to use skilled migration partners like INNOVA Consulting Group. Yeah. Yep. You've also got your planning and processes, so building that business case with executive sponsorship. Again, tying in that total cost of ownership, Michael, looking at the ROI, and also knowing that if you looked at it 2-3 years ago, it's most where you concluded, hey, on premises is the answer. Well, today that might be a different story with the way prices have changed.
Absolutely. The final piece is the governance.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, making sure that what you're setting up is going to, be appropriate for your business, have the right compliance in place, that people have the right permissions, and there's no opportunity for a mistake to be happen, some sort of breach. The security foundation, you establish that early on, and again, Microsoft provides tools to continually recommend suggestions on how you can improve your security. And so let's jump to, I like this one, building that cloud business case. And quite often we'll be talking to, IT directors, CTOs, CIOs that they want to move to the cloud. They're ready to move to the cloud. They understand the benefits, but they have to build the case for their leadership. And, as we mentioned, the first step is just gathering up the inventory of what you've got through Azure Migrate or a Mover tool, something like that, to really get your hands around all of your users, your applications, your licenses, your network, your usage information, so that you will have a really firm understanding of what it's going to take and what it's going to cost to move to the cloud. Azure has a pricing calculator that we can help you with, where you can go plug in and get estimates for what it's going to cost your business to make that migration to the cloud. So you want to take advantage of that. And then they also have a total cost of ownership calculator, which is interesting when you start to look out, 3 to 5 years and all those costs and from licenses and security and your total cost of ownership. That's going to help you as well make that case.
Sure. Yeah, that total cost of ownership is going to include your maintenance patches, security updates, all the things that you've had to have internal personnel handling. Now the cloud is going to automate a lot of that process for you.
Yeah. All right.
So from a best practice standpoint, Michael, there are 3 different situations where we've got some data here, and that is if you do a data center migration versus total cost of ownership versus on-premises, looking at VMware VMs, for instance, moving it from on-premises to an infrastructure as a service model, people are saving up to 78%. Second example here, rehosting applications onto Azure, going from a Windows SQL or a Linux MySQL into infrastructure as a service, again, saving up to 68%. And then finally, you've got that re-architecting the application for Azure, again, going from either a Windows SQL or a Linux MySQL to an app service within Azure and saving up to 63%.
And that's significant, Bruce. And again, if you haven't looked at pricing in the last couple of years, take another look, because things are changing in our favor, and there's a lot of reasons now to make this migration.
Yeah, and finally, we bring up that one. Hey, if you're moving your end of support Windows server or SQL server, we've seen for 100 VMs over 3 years, $750,000 cost savings. That's huge.
It's huge.
A lot of innovation.
Exactly. Frees up a lot of resources and gets you more secure and compliant and positioned for future growth. All right. Well, as we wrap things up here, obviously everyone's moving to the cloud, and there's, here's a few examples, some quotes, and I'm not going to go through them all. I'm sure you all are hearing the stories. INNOVA's ready to help, and today's presentation, obviously we couldn't touch upon everything, why you should embrace the cloud, but hopefully we've given you some things to think about. And again, we're available to dive deeper if you want. Please reach out. And with that, we're going to kind of wrap it up here and take a few questions if anyone has them. There's a Q&A feature, and here is one I see, Bruce, that you can help answer. We talked about security. How is that bundled? Is it an additional cost within Azure? How much of the security is included?
Great question. I appreciate that coming in from our participants here. The security is embedded and included in the cost of Azure in the cloud. We have 3,500 engineers dedicated to security within Microsoft and spend over $1 billion a year on it. The statistics are astounding in terms of, I believe it's over 4 trillion instances happening every day that are being monitored and managed within the Microsoft cloud environment. So it's a very comprehensive, deep security set. I would challenge any company in the world to be able to manage their security as tightly as Azure is managed in Microsoft.
You know, I'll also add that we often talk to, you know, certainly large organizations, but the small to mid-sized companies are very much a target of the various hackers out there in the world. When you're a smaller business, sometimes you're an easier target, and so they're going after everyone. And there's, you know, there's a lot of them around the world that are, as Bruce mentioned, constantly pinging and looking for a door, looking for a way in. And so you really need to get secure to move forward confidently as a business.
That's a great point, Michael, because often the small companies that we talk to think, well, I'm a small company, so they won't be trying to hack me. And actually, you become the prime target because of that thought process, where you may not have invested in the security and hardware infrastructure to support a very good security footprint, and that actually makes you more vulnerable, and so that makes you a bigger target for them.
Yeah, reach out, because we, you know, could potentially do a free assessment for you and identify those holes in your systems and help you make that case to move to the cloud.
Looks like we have a wrap, Michael. I appreciate having the opportunity to present with you again, and thank you for all our participants for joining us. And we'll look forward to everybody on the next webinar.
Yeah, we'll pick the $250 winner. You'll hear from us via email. Thanks again, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.